Ahoy mateys! I am about 200 miles away from my Chris Craft Corinthian now to check out my friend Mario's 1987 Chris Craft Catalina. This boat is about the same size as mine, but it's very different in a lot of ways. Also very similar. It has that same Chris Craft cabin cruiser feel. And also, you'll want to check out this family's absolutely amazing story. Mario and his parents have taken this boat hundreds of miles in the Atlantic Ocean. No kidding, their stories are amazing. Let's go get on board right now.
Two 350 engines, both they're small blocks. They both shove out 270 horsepower. They're both Crusaders. My engine rooms are relatively spacious. I've got a 6.5 kilowatt hour generator. Everything runs perfect, you know, knock on wood. It still hopefully will be for the, foreseeable future. Everything is really hardy on this boat, and I am amazed at the quality of Chris Craft. So the aft cabin has a little tool room in it. It's got a little closet, and then it also has an ensuite bathroom. It's got a standalone shower, sink, and a head. And then in front, there's the bathroom, and sink is external, so it's in the bedroom, and then you have your front bedroom and a front closet. Step up, you have your galley, your dining area. Step up again, back into the big salon, spacious, and you actually enter in the salon from the aft deck, and that's the only entryway into the interior of the boat. I kind of like it without the internal bridge, without the internal helm, because it's just more spacious, and in a boat this size, space is a priority.
What do you think about your son being able to control a machine this big? This like unwieldy.
I like that it's his boat because I don't have the problems with it.
It takes a village, I'll tell you what. For a boat this size, it truly takes a village. 26 to 2800 is a good cruise. It's a good cruise RPM for this boat. And I can push to about 20, 21 miles per hour if I want to.
Nice.
But I usually cruise around just, 10 to 12.
So since we're down south and the St. Johns River runs from south to north, that means we're so much closer to the source of the St. Johns River, which means the river is a lot narrower. It's only about maybe 300, 400 feet wide at this point. It's a lot calmer, and it only flows in one direction. It's not tidal. It really is so interesting to see the river that I've lived on and loved for 3 years, like back where it begins, at the very beginning of the river. It's so different. Even though it's the same river, same water, the ecosystem is entirely different. This is more like the Everglades, where we've got water-growing mangrove trees and stuff, and just dense jungle. Man, this is something else. We're on board y'all's Chris Craft Catalina. This boat is absolutely amazing. I love it so much, and how you got it from like one part of Florida to the other is like the coolest story ever.
It was in Fort Lauderdale at the time, but I made the final decision and purchased sight unseen from Salt Lake City, Utah. I saw it on Craigslist. I was like, that's a pretty good deal. So I sent my parents down there to look at it, and lo and behold, I made the final decision, quarantined in a basement in Utah.
So at that point, you had to get it from Fort Lauderdale to Titusville. You knew that one of the engines had a little bit of an issue, right?
Well, if Mario was going to lose money, he was going to lose a lot of money. If it was a good deal, it was a real good deal. And so he went on the fact that maybe it was just a gas issue.
This kind of boat, you need to go out on adventures and everything else, and it definitely got its legs stretched when y'all took over.
Neither my mom or my dad knew how to pilot a boat like this. It was huge. It was a gigantic boat. They both had no clue. It's a 2-engine boat, right? And so we went through tons of captains. We were stressing trying to find somebody. Right before we were supposed to pick up the boat. We had a captain all set up. He dropped out. Like 2 or 3 days right
Oh,
before we
that's
were supposed to pick
stressful.
up the boat. And if I didn't find a captain, I lost my deposit on the boat and I lost everything. And that's when my mom got a phone call.
He said, I understand you need a captain to pilot a boat from Fort Lauderdale. I said, yes, I do. And you're who? He said, Captain Flash. I said, great. And how much are you going to charge?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem, right? You don't
And
know.
he said, "There's no charge, but I requested I bring my wife, my parrot, and you supply all the food.
A freaking parrot?
A parrot named Happy."
He was a legit captain right there.
That is awesome.
He went down in the engine room and did his 25 minutes of checking around and came back and went, we're good to go.
We're good to go on an adventure now. So when you got out on the water, did things start off well? Did it
We never made it to the mouth of, what is that, Fort Lauderdale River, whatever. We made it in 2 days. We made it to Southwest Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Because
Hey, that's progress.
we had to constantly change the fuel filters. We were good to go for another
Couple hours.
maybe 10 miles, 5 miles, and then we'd have to change them out again.
And all the bridges down there are so low, and once you brought it down to a low enough RPM, the fuel was so bad that the boat would die. Both engines would die.
So the
And we
first,
couldn't get them started
the
again.
first bridge we hit, both engines died.
Oh, that's
And-
terrifying.
Because we were changing the fuel
They were
filters.
down.
Yeah.
As they were
Michael
trying
was
to
down, and
control the boat.
Flash was up here, but he kind of got stuck between a pylon and his
Oh my
stomach.
gosh.
And Gail was up front, and I was in the back, and I slipped off the back.
Into the water?
Into the water.
I didn't go into the water because I grabbed the railing, but I could only hold one hand. And the way the railing is, you can't get yourself back up on the boat.
Yeah.
Well, Flash couldn't get to me because he was stuck between the pylon, and Mike was down in the engine room. So I started screaming for Michael, "You need to come up here. I'm a little busy right now, dear." And I yelled back.
This is life or death.
Now!
No, I'm down in the engine room
So
trying
I'm
to
yelling
change
at
out the
him
filters.
now. So Michael comes up and Gail, Michael get me up off the side before we go into the dock and tie off. 15 minutes later, they replaced, then off we went. The next day was just stop and go,
Stop and
change
go.
them.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, to change. The second night was the worst night.
We had a strong wind.
Right.
And we went to anchor, and the anchor was not holding us. So we were going to put out the back anchor. Force of the boat, it just caused all kinds of problems
Whoa.
with that anchor. And eventually what happened was...
It wrapped around your face and took you off the side of the boat.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
god.
But he doesn't remember it though.
He went off the side. We could not see him. We could not find him. It was dark. And then he came up. And he was wet from about the knee down. We believe he passed out. He was black and blue across the face and bleeding. And we gave him a shot of glue, and he was fine the next day.
And during this whole adventure, right, I'm not here. I call them at the worst time. Every time I call them, it's, get the hell off the phone, we're busy. And I just am like, okay. Every single time I'm calling them, there's a sheriff on board the boat, something's broken, something's smoking, something's happening every time I
Nothing's
call them.
Oh, was there ever a point in your mind where, like, maybe this boat thing was a bad idea?
Every single time I call. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it was so much fun. It really was.
Wow. In the years since then, you've learned to control the boat a
A
lot
little
more.
bit better, just a little bit.
And eventually, you wanted to take an even longer trip from Titusville to Sanford. So that's only, what, like 50 miles away?
Well, it's 30 miles away by land.
Yeah.
It's 300 miles away by waterways.
Oh.
And I got so many quotes to move the boat over land. I got everywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 quotes. There was no way I could afford that just to move the boat 30 miles. So I decided instead to take it by water. I have to go up the Intercoastal 150 miles and down the St. John's 150 miles. Ended up just being my dad and I for that 300-mile trip, and that was a wild trip in
That's a
itself
It was
too.
hell
a
of a
great
trip.
trip.
First day, we actually went out of the inlet in New Smyrna and came up the ocean the entire way to the Jacksonville Inlet. We were getting smacked with some enormous waves. I've never been in conditions that rough before. It was to the point where we had to bolster ourselves in our seat, and you can't get up to even switch positions. It was
Wow.
ridiculously rough. I couldn't even make it off of the top deck.
Wow.
It was that bad. And I was on hands and knees, and I gave up. I said, I'm going to kill myself doing this. I can't do this. We were at the top of a wave, and both engines revved really high, because somehow the props got out of the water.
So
It was that ridiculous.
You jumped a 40-foot boat.
It was that ridiculous. I mean, that was the time when I was just like, this is insane.
Yeah.
It was one of the most scary experiences of my life. I don't know about you. We were thanking every deity known to man when we got in the inlet. We
thanking
were
God,
so
I hope.
happy. It was great. About 10 miles in the inlet, my port engine dies. I'm like, wow, this sucks. Let's keep going on the starboard for a second and figure this out. And then the starboard dies about 2 minutes later, and I was like, this is a bad issue. So we start drifting in the middle of the big shipping channel in Jacksonville, the big shipping lane, and I'm up there trying to start the engine,
And next thing I know, a fire rescue boat comes up. And they were like, well, the Navy, the U.S. Navy called us, and they need you out of here immediately. That's the U.S. Navy fuel dock that we were about 50 yards from. Long story short, I was facing like a $4,000 sea tow bill at the time if I didn't get my engines running within an hour.
Oh man.
We got one engine running, and my dad and I said, let's book it. We're out of here. And we got out of there. We went all the way through downtown Jacksonville on one engine. I have to dock at this little keyhole dock in this marina I know nothing about. But after that, we figured out everything. We figured out it was just my fault for not looking at the fuel gauge more. We ran out of fuel. But the next day we left early and we made it here all in one day. So it took 2 days of traveling. We made it to the Sanford area.
So now that it's here in Sanford, I think it's going to make a great Airbnb. Yeah, when
Yeah,
it's
well,
open
You
and
can
you're,
book now.
it is a seaworthy, beautiful, beautiful yacht.
So if you want to become part of the story of this boat that has just had so many adventures in the last couple of years, you can rent this as an Airbnb.
You gotta
There's
book it now.
a link down below, I guess. Do you have any plans in the future, moving forward, for big adventures or?
Around the world.